And we are live. What's going on, YouTube Live? It's your boy, Billy Rowe. Today is Wednesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And if it is Wednesday, you should know what that means by now. It's time for your Wednesday word. That's Wednesday word. Jumping straight into it. Tonight's topic is perceived invisibility. I almost said invincibility. Maybe that's another topic for another day. But perceived invisibility. I always like to start with what I mean by my topic. So what do I mean by perceived invisibility? Really what that is about is our perception of going through our lives in different times of life, certain days, certain moments where we perceive that we are unseen by the people that are surrounding us. And that perceived invisibility, what it does is, I believe, is how it acts as like this this wall that we place in front of us to kind of keep people from getting in to see who we truly are, or maybe some of our vulnerabilities that we may have. So perceived invisibility, what that is really, like I said, it's just the moments where we are being observed by those around us that are in our surroundings, where we think that nobody is paying attention or nobody's listening or nobody is aware of what our situation is or what our contribution is. It is in those moments where we are actually seen as unobserved. Our unobserved self. They say when you're being observed, you act differently versus when you are unaware that you're being observed. So that's what perceived invisibility is. I got 5 tools for how to manage and deal with perceived invisibility to hopefully flip it from a defensive mechanism into something that will allow you to live a little more freely in life. What's going on, Black man? Being brutally honest. Peace, fam. Jumping straight into the first tool that I want to drop for tonight when it comes to perceived invisibility is it's important for us to learn how to put down our mask and put down our shield. So the mask, not in the sense of war, but the mask is typically something that we use in arts to, help present or help kind of create this illusion of who we think we are. One of my favorite dance groups, the Jabberwockies, they actually use the masks to hide their identity so that people can focus on the actual dance that's taking place. So the mask, the reason why it's important to put the mask down is because the mask is very constricting from the standpoint of being able to see what's in your peripheral. If you have a mask that's covering both sides, you're kind of limited to what you can see out the slits of the mask. Also, it can, depending if you grew up in the era I grew up in, when Halloween costumes were not as soft and warm as they are now, we just had the little slit where you were supposed to try to get as much air as you could through that slit. So it can also be encumbering to your ability to relax and just kind of like allow the flow of life to move forward and things. So the mask is something you got to put down for visibility and for relaxation. The shield is something that I recommend putting down with the mask, because the shield, what it does is it acts as this thing that you're going to use to protect yourself. And if you were walking around 24/7 a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, then with a shield, then that means that you're in a defensive position. And so anytime that you are in an environment where you can be observed or where you might perceive that you're invisible, the moment somebody brings the light that you're not invisible and they can see you, you're going to have that shield up and you're more than likely going to use it to try to defend yourself. As you know, if you play any sports, defense will help win games, but unfortunately, defense alone cannot win a game. At some point, you have to have offense or take the initiative to branch out in order to score. So that's the first tool, coming to just basically taking off the mask and putting down your shield. I also wanted to think about it as the cloak. If you watch Harry Potter, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but if you are a Harry Potter fan, that cloak that they walk around with and they're invisible because nobody can see them. If that's what resonates better with you, put the cloak down. Number 2, what's going on, Cousin Brian? Number 2 is the tool for when I started thinking about perceived invisibility is let go of your first person perspective. So I kind of, if you were watching last night's Intersation, kind of touched on this tool a little bit. But we live our lives completely in this first person realm, like 95% of it. I'm just making up percentages because I don't have any research behind it. But I would say about 95% of our lives is spent in first person perspective. Unless you're looking in a mirror, you can't see your forehead, you can't see your cheekbones, you can maybe see your nose if you look down kind of funny, but really 95% of your life, of yourself you can't see. Pretty much after the neck down, I could see, but then I have a whole back area that I don't even know what it looks like. Hopefully it looks okay. We'll have to see when I go to the beach next time. But because you're in this first person perspective, you typically give that same unawareness to the people that are around you. So your surroundings, again, if it's maybe a boss, maybe it's your romantic partner, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a sibling, a family member, whatever it may be, you give them the same perspective that you see of yourself is what you assume that they see. However, they don't see you in first person perspective. They see you in your entirety from a third person perspective. And so that means they can see flaws that you cannot see, metaphorically and physically see flaws that you may not be aware of or may not be able to see. That also means that there may be times where, because they're not your eyes, they may see you doing things, good or bad, that they may want to duplicate in their lives. So it's important when it comes to perceived invisibility. Part of dropping that mentality of feeling like we're walking around and we're invisible is simply just saying, you know what? Not everybody is seeing me how I see me, because I only see me from a first person perspective. It's actually, even when I do Wednesday Words or when I'm doing content on YouTube, it's a little strange for me when I see myself on video, because it's like, oh, I didn't know I sat like that, or, oh, I didn't know I had that body language. I didn't know I had that twitch. I didn't know that I, did whatever it may be, because now I'm seeing myself from the outside looking in versus the perspective that I'm normally in. So that's the second tool, is just letting go of the first person's perspective. Also, often, I put a note here, often I have felt that I've been unseen, and it's typically because I don't see myself. But once I understand that I am seen, it allows me, or helps to reinforce that compassion for others and that empathy for others, to realize that, they're also living a first person perspective. And so they may not be privy to some of the flaws or some of the things that I may think are flaws in their life. And so having a little more compassion and patience for them. That's another aspect of letting go of that first person perspective that will help you in interacting with others. The third tool that I came up with regarding this topic was become more aware of your surroundings. So part of the invisibility complex, we're going to call it, where we feel like we are unseen, or where we're just kind of sliding under the radar. In some places, like I said, negative, where you think you're slick and getting away with something, or in some places positive, where you're just like, oh, I'm not going to make any waves or ripples. I'm just going to, kind of slide along and hopefully nobody sees me. It's simply because we're not aware of our surroundings. So we're not aware of where attention really is, because we're so busy trying to mask our own energy. We're so busy trying to mask our own identity. We're so busy trying to be invisible. So that is a very important aspect of being our perceived invisibility, is really being in tune with what your surroundings, what's going on in your surroundings, not just from a safety perspective, like if something's going on, you might need to leave the scene, but from a perspective of, what type of example are you giving? What type of energy are you putting out there? What type of impact are you having in the environment that you're in? So it's more so about being aware of the surroundings, so that you can be aware of the influence, or well, I'm going to use that word, where you can be aware of the influence that you can have within that environment. When you try to go into this shell and be invisible, what actually ends up happening, it's almost like a conversation to the side where somebody whispers. If people just talk in their regular voice, normally people are not tuning in to try to hear what's being said. But the moment you go into whispering, now it's like, oh, they're telling secrets. I want to hear secrets. I want to know the business. So people start tuning in. And that happens when you're not aware of your surrounding and you try to invoke this invisibility. Now people are like, well, what do they have to hide? And why are they acting so awkward in this space where there wasn't attention on you, or maybe there was a little bit of attention on you, but now there's a lot of attention on you because of the fact that you're trying to fade into the background. So that's the third tool that I had, was become more aware of your surroundings. Excuse me. The fourth tool that I came up with when I was dealing with this particular topic, or creating content on this topic, was embrace the impact that your presence makes. Embrace the impact that your presence makes. There are people that I think we all know that can literally walk into a room and that room lights up. Hey, what's going on, Q? That room lights up with vibrance. It lights up with their energy. It lights up with just like good vibes. There's also people who walk into a room and it's a Debbie Downer situation where the energy drops, everybody kind of gets quiet and becomes a little more reclusive. I'm going to say embrace the positive energy, work on the negative energy. So on the positive side, embrace that energy, embrace the impact that you bring into a room. If you have a strength, whether it's singing, I know people who used to get on my nerves growing up, and Q can attest to this. They would just be singing 24/7 and it'd be like, can you not sing a song today? Because I'm tired of hearing you singing. But that's them embracing their presence. If that's the gift that they feel like they have, and they feel like, hey, I come into a room and if it's a little down or it's a little stiff or it's a little tight, I can come in and maybe sing a song that everybody knows, and they kind of relax and they get into a place where they're a little more open and they're a little more receptive. And now they're making better connections with each other and maybe making better connections with me. So embrace that when you step into a place, you should make a change. Your presence should change where you step into, no matter what the surroundings are. It's almost like a pond with a rock. You know, a pond can be at peace. The water can be still on the surface. There's movement going on underneath, but on the surface, it can be still. And the moment when you throw that rock in, that water doesn't ignore that the rock came into the pond, and the rock cannot just be like, oh, I'm just in the pond now. No, when you drop that rock in the pond, there's ripples that go out. And really, those ripples can go for quite some time, unenamored by any type of like floating debris or anything. They can go for a pretty far distance. And that's what you should be. You should be the pond dropping into the rock. I'm not saying you got to come in like a SWAT team from the helicopter, breach and clear or anything like that. But you can be the rock going into the pond, creating ripples and creating the resonating impact of your presence throughout other people that can actually touch people that were not in that room that day. So that's the fourth tool. The fifth tool that I want to drop, and it's actually the final tool when it came to this being and our perceived invisibility concept, was don't focus on whether you are seen or unseen. That's going to be the key indicator. It could have been first, but I really wanted that to be last. When it comes to perceiving that we're invisible, what that means is that your focus is really on your visibility. And so to an extent, that can be good if you're in something that is competitive, job interview, whatever it may be, that can be good. However, and just in everyday interacting with people, trying to focus on whether or not they see you. Here I am, there I am, here I am, I'm over here, everybody pay attention to me. Whether you're seen or not, allow your natural self to be seen. So be who you really are. And really, when you stop focusing on being seen or unseen, that's what comes to the surface, is our authentic self. Be who you really are. Be authentic to who you are. And don't worry about whether people see you or not, because what you will find is the people who are paying attention to you are going to see a much better you when they're not seeing the person who you think they want to see. When they're not seeing the person who you feel like you have to be because you're being observed. So those are the 5 bullet points that I dropped or the tools that I dropped for today's Wednesday word. I'm going to go over them really, really quick. Number 1 is put down the mask and shield. Number 2 is let go of your first person perspective. Number 3 is become more aware of your surroundings. Number 4 is embrace the impact that your presence makes. And number 5 is don't focus on whether you are seen or unseen. Just be your authentic self. So as always with the Wednesday word, I like to share a personal story, kind of something that got me to thinking about this topic and where this topic originated from, this particular story. But I always like to share a story on how I kind of got my thoughts clear on this particular topic of perceived invisibility. So the story that I want to share today actually is something that happened to me very recently in December, where it was actually a little bit before December. I had a couple of people kind of hint to this, and then December, it just kind of really became real. So I was actually asleep and got a phone call via Facebook from a person that I grew up with who was really in a bad place and needed a friend, needed some compassion, needed some empathy, some sympathy, and needed somebody to just like hear them. And so it led to a conversation because initially it was like 5 a.m. I didn't answer the phone because I was like, what's that noise? Then when I figured out what the noise was, tried to go back to sleep. It was like, oh, that must have been an accident. Tried to go back to sleep. Couldn't go back to sleep. woke up and said, hey, did you mean to message me or mean to call me? They were like, yeah, can you call me? So I called this person and we ended up being on the phone for like 2 hours. And in the time that we're talking, this person is telling me about why they chose to reach out to me. This person and I hadn't spoken very often or very frequently over the years. When we were younger, we hung out a little bit, you know, here and there. But he was like in my circle, but not like an R&B squared circle. He was just like a person, like a friend that I had in my circle. And so he's talking to me about like some deep, heavy stuff. And like he was in a dark place and we were able to kind of work through that together and pull out of that. However, some of the things that he shared to me got me to thinking about this concept of perceived invisibility, because he was telling me about the impact that I had on his life while we were children. And while he's sharing how, you know, you were a person I always thought was very thoughtful and well thought and had your life together and had, you know, good relationships and all these different things. I didn't realize that I had all those things. Like I realized I had good friends. I tried to be a good thinker, but I still made plenty of mistakes in my childhood and probably have a couple more to make in my adulthood life. But he was sharing with me my visibility in his life in the moments when I thought I was perceived to be invisible, where I was making some good decisions and things were working out, and then I was making some bad decisions and things weren't working out. He was a person who was observing me, where I wouldn't have known otherwise that I was being observed. If nobody told me, hey, you were being observed at that time in your life, you made some life-changing impacts, I would not have known that had I had that conversation. And so it really got me to thinking about perceived invisibility from where my first person perspective is I'm just living my life every day as Billy, the best that I can live it to make all people with the name Billy proud. Let's work with that. So that's what I'm doing. But in the midst of doing that, when I'm not encumbered by worrying about whether people see me and I'm popular or people don't see me and I'm kind of like a loner, where I'm not worried about those things, that is where I have made some of my greatest life impacts. And so that's what got me thinking about this topic. That's what made me want to bring this topic to the surface, is realize that that doesn't just happen in my life. That happens in each and every one of your lives as well, to where you may not know what you're doing. You may know what you're doing as far as for yourself, but you don't understand the impact that that is having from an observation standpoint, third person, somebody watching you and seeing you struggle with the decisions. They may see you struggling with alcoholism. They may see you struggling with lust. They may see you struggling with depression. They may see you successful. They may see you surrounding yourself with friends. They can see all these different things from the standpoint of an observer, and you never know what that encouragement is going to do for them later. Number one, for them individually later, and or the lives that it will impact because they have taken a moment to see you in your authentic state. So when it comes to perceived invisibility, shed the cloak, shed the mask, shed the shield, and be your authentic self. As always, I'm happy you guys have rocked with me for the Wednesday Word. I hope you guys got some value out of tonight's message. What we will be having on the next first row, the next live show on the first row will be coming up on Monday, January, let me see, I have the date here, January 28th. It's at 6 p.m. It'll be the second show of Keeping It Real Estate with Key Bryant. He's definitely coming along. He's made a commitment to be here all year. So every other Monday, 6 p.m., you guys should be able to see him. The topic will be why first-time home buyers should not buy a home. I got to tune into that. I mean, I own a home, but I still want to know because I got kids and I got to understand why they should or should not buy a home. Anyway, so that will be the next live content that we have. I appreciate you guys for rocking with me on the first row. If you're watching live and you have not already, please click the subscribe button. And when you click it, you'll see a bell. Click the bell so you can be notified when we are live on the first row. Other than that, I'm happy you guys have come. I look forward to seeing you guys next week on the first row. If you're not here today, we'll save a seat for you next week. If you are here today, come back next week. Your seat will be already reserved for you. Other than that, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. I'm happy to engage with you in the comments or in the chat if you're live, in the comments if you're watching the replay. But until then, one love, peace, and God bless.